right, welcome into Surviving Paradise, the podcast that takes a sometimes serious, almost always humorous look at the claim by Jehovah's Witnesses that they're living in a modern day spiritual paradise. I am your host, Stacy Bauman, former elder, ministerial servant, and really the only thing I do claim, as I always say here, a kid who was raised among Jehovah's Witnesses in the 70s and the 80s. And as I do, just a warning, if you're new and you've stumbled onto this by accident, know that we try to have some fun. Overall, the effort is to heal, but every episode features lots of sarcasm, humor, and my own personal observations and experiences as a Jehovah's Witness. I have been out just about 14 years now, but know that this is never meant to offend anyone. It is meant to entertain, heal, maybe provide some insight. Like to think that sometimes it's kind of smart, but who knows? I'll let you be the judge. I want to jump into a subject this week that I think is funny. Funny in a painfully ironic way, funny in an absurd way, uh, for so many reasons that we're going to dive into. But I think that anyone that may have stumbled on this podcast or is listening, whether you're an ex-Jehovah's Witness or you're, as I've come to learn about the new acronyms, a PMO or PME, forgive me, only in recent times have I learned about all these things. This is new since I've left. But I think most of us would agree that happiness, being truly happy at the soul level, is almost always life's greatest goal. I don't think we're going to get a lot of disagreement with that. Happiness with self, happiness with how we spend our days, whether that be in careers or hobbies or traveling, happiness with our partners. Almost everyone universally is seeking someone to share their life with in one form or another. But happiness and the subject of happiness and the bucket of happiness is extremely important to almost any human being that you're going to encounter in life. I've never yet ran into someone who said, I really just don't want to be happy. you know, and that's not, as we will unpack here, to speak of things like mental illness, depression, and things of that nature. But you're not going to find someone who's eager to be unhappy. Everybody wants to be happy, genuinely happy at the soul level. And this is in recognition of the fact that life has many challenges. Life has a lot of things happen that aren't happy. They aren't fun. But nonetheless, we almost clamor when coming out of a problem or a challenge. We're almost clamoring for that feeling of being happy yet again. So we're going to talk about happiness. And as the famous quote from Eleanor Roosevelt goes, happiness is not a goal, it's a byproduct of a life well lived. And isn't that true? So before I delve into all the fun stuff in that world, that paradise, that spiritual paradise of Jehovah's Witnesses in 2022, I just want to take a minute to talk about some fun stuff. What brings you happiness? And as you're listening to this, hopefully safely, really give it some thought. Pause for a minute. What is it if someone asked you, give me your top 5 things that make you happy? What are the things that come to mind when you feel genuinely happy as a person or in life, where you feel joyful, content, serene? I'm going to share a few of mine. As I do on this show, I try to bare my own soul, all of the good stuff, all of the bad stuff, my own mistakes, my own bizarre thoughts through the years as a Jehovah's Witness and just as a human on a rock in a big universe. I'm going to share what are some things that genuinely bring me personal happiness or joy on a day-to-day or even in a moment's notice. I'm going to start with one that, I'm smiling as I say this because it's just one of those things. I don't know how this can impact everybody, but how do you feel when you see a baby or a child belly laugh? Like seeing kids happy. Yeah, come on, let's stay out of the creepy stuff like you're walking by a park. I'm going to stare at other people. No, I'm talking about when you really see children having a great time, enjoying their life, being happy, or watching them belly laugh. Hold that thought because I'm going to come back to it later on in the show. But that's one of the things that make me genuinely happy as a human being is to see children enjoying life. But man, when they belly laugh, that is awesome. You've probably seen some of these social media posts where a kid is being tackled by a puppy and they are just laughing from the gut. Makes me happy. Love it. Here's another one for me. Smells. I know it's weird. It's weird. And there's probably psychology I didn't take the time to delve into. But a smell can trigger great happiness in me. Probably attached to a memory or just because it's a great experience. Fresh brewed coffee in the morning. Love it. Makes me happy. The smell after a rain, a good rain, the way the earth smells, the air smells, the beach, anything that smells at the beach. I love eucalyptus trees in the Bay Area, in the North Bay where I grew up. As soon as I land on an airplane and I get home, that smell literally impacts my soul. I love it. And then, if, going back to kids, babies, their head right after they've been bathed, when you hold a precious new little baby and you smell their head, how amazing is that? I could spend hours getting into music and the impact music has had on my life and continues to have on my life on a daily basis. There isn't a room in my house that does not have speakers. Music is pumping constantly in my life, good, bad, heavy, dark. I love the edges. I'm all about the edges of music, and it brings me immense happiness. When I'm in a bad space, I usually turn to music. And then, some other things that you can't measure that bring me happiness or a smile on my face, seeing other people accomplish a goal they've ever always wanted to. I'm a big sports freak, so I love just the dynamic of bringing together, in football terms, 11 different guys on both sides of the ball with different personalities and backgrounds and parents somehow coming together to accomplish a goal brings me great happiness. Or just helping someone without anything in return. That's such a joyful feeling to see someone happy or bailed out of a circumstance. So really, for me personally, happiness is a great subject. I love it. I'm always in pursuit of it. I'm sure most people are. The list is endless. But what are yours? I'd love to hear this. This little podcast is on social media, YouTube. I'd love to see some of the fun stuff that makes people happy at the soul level, brings you joy. But here we go. Here we go. Buckle up, sit down. Whatever, and I mean whatever it is that brings you personal joy, that ache of happiness in your soul, in the solar plexus, whatever it is, it's time for you to realize that it all pales in comparison to the happiness experienced by being a Jehovah's Witness. That's right. That's right. Whatever it is that brings you joy and happiness is just so below anything you could experience by just being one of Jehovah's Witnesses. They would have you believe that Jehovah's Witnesses are walking around in a perpetual world of happiness, in a paradise. Thus, the sarcastic title of this podcast, that life is one big jolly rainbow if you're a Jehovah's Witness, that they are, in fact, the happiest people on planet Earth. That's right, the happiest. No one comes close. The claim is boldly presented to the rest of the universe that being one of 8 million Jehovah's Witnesses in strict obedience to the 8 guys they'll never meet in upstate New York on their resort compound, that just that alone makes you one of the most fortunate and, more importantly, happiest people on the planet. That's right. If you think I'm being absurd and ridiculous, here we go. As we do, they make the claim, I simply share it. And if you weren't aware of this amazing fact that Jehovah's Witnesses are the happiest people, not only on earth, but I'm sure they'd say in the entire universe, they make every effort in millions and billions of publication pages to tell you that you are among the happiest people on the earth. I present to you, and I'm going in order of years in terms of references, so you can see that this claim that they're the happiest people on the planet has been going on for decades. The Kingdom Ministry of February 2002, page 1, paragraph 1, under the aptly titled article, The Happiest People on Earth. This quote is shared, this nugget from Jesus through the 8 guys. It says, quote, happy is the people whose God is Jehovah, Psalms 144:15. Those words describe Jehovah's Witnesses as the happiest people on earth, end quote. The Watchtower of 1999, we're going backwards. October 1st, page 8, paragraph 13, quote, of course, the fact that Jehovah's servants weep over the sorry state of world affairs does not preclude their being happy. On the contrary, they are actually the happiest group of people on earth. End quote. Let's go back a little farther. The Watchtower of 1962, September 1st, page 530, paragraph 22, quote, in the New World Society of Jehovah's Witnesses, you find people from all walks of life, many of whom lack diplomas from man's centers of learning. Yet these people know the Bible. They are teachers. They accept with eagerness the obligation of teaching others God's word. They do it year after year with the same love of God and appreciation for spiritual food as when they first tasted it. They are the happiest and most peaceful persons on the earth. End quote. I want you to know that I am working on my fruitages of the Spirit. I am working on self-control because I want to take that one reference and talk about people who don't have diplomas, whether or not Jehovah's Witnesses really know their Bible or even read it. Most of them do not or ever have. Or the fact that they are teachers. Most of them can't teach their own kids. Subject for another show. But aside from that, if you're picturing at their new compound under construction a giant sign much like Anaheim, California's Disneyland, where it calls it the Magic Kingdom, I've often wondered why they don't just prop up a sign, the happiest place on earth, right in front of Bethel. The claims are bold. Would you not agree? Bold. The happiest and most peaceful people on earth. But how about one more? Because it's really, really fun for me. The Watchtower Study Edition in more recent times of 2018, the month of September, pages 15 through 20, under the aptly titled Watchtower article, Happy Are Those Who Serve the Happy God. Quote, Jehovah's Witnesses are a happy people. Whenever they are together, whether at a meeting, an assembly, or a social gathering, they are talking and laughing with one another. Why are they so happy? It is mainly because they know Jehovah, the happy God. They serve him and try to imitate him. Jehovah is the source of happiness, so he wants us to be happy, and he gives us many reasons to be joyful. End quote. Whenever they're together, remember that comment. Remember that comment came from heaven, Jesus through the big 8. Happiness, as displayed and told by the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses. And let me tell you what, there are many, many more references regarding the happiest people on earth, but I'm going to stop there in the interest of time and, frankly, mental health. Happiness, that feeling you get in whatever it is that it brings out in you, it pales. It's nothing. It's not nearly as measurable against what it means to be a Jehovah's Witness. That great meal, watching your child truly joyful, accomplishing a goal, fighting off disease and coming back from it. That sound of music when you're in a mood. Nope. Cash it. The happiest people on earth are Jehovah's Witnesses. So, join me now as I examine how there is not only zero evidence for such sweeping, unsubstantiated claims, but that it couldn't be further from the truth. And if you're an ex-Jehovah's Witness listening, I'm guessing you are agreeing with me. And you can witness this with your own eyes in any congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses you visit. Disclaimer, some of the developing nations have a different vibe and a different feel. But in most westernized locations of Jehovah's Witnesses, go into any of them. No, you will not, and I mean not, go to any meeting, assembly, or social gathering and see joyous people, as the Watchtower claims in 2018. In fact, as you scan the audience, as I often did from the stage as an elder that was up there way too often, and you will see people, you will look into their faces, and the look is of defeat. It's exhaustion. It's depression. It's stressed out of their minds. I used to love seeing the guy that I knew worked his tail off and then came to the Kingdom Hall asleep. Didn't bother me. I get it. I get it. You'll see people wrestling with kids that just want to go out and play, or wondering why they raced home from work in rush hour traffic and skipped dinner yet again to put on a tie or a dress and listen to Brother Unprepared tell us for the millionth time that we need to make more return visits. That just being at the meeting that night simply wasn't enough. It is palpable. It's in every meeting, every assembly, every congregation. And even worse, those in the audience will stare at the speaker as he tells them that they are, in fact, the happiest people on earth. Then spend the next 2 hours glazed over inside their heads, trying to figure out why they don't feel like the happiest people on earth. You know that little voice. What's wrong with me that I'm not happy? Maybe I'm not doing enough. Maybe I need to stand by the cart a little longer. Maybe I'm a jerk for thinking these songs sound terrible and are poorly written. Maybe I should send the governing body more money. What do I do with all of this guilt for not feeling happy? I'm supposed to. They tell me I'm with the happiest people on earth, and yet I don't feel like it. Oh, yes, if you were ever a Jehovah's Witness, I'm sure that you recognize the feelings I speak of. So let's just start with the obvious in this matter of happiness and being the happiest people on earth, as we are told came from Jesus himself in the heavens. Let's start with the obvious. Folks, this isn't measurable. It isn't measurable. Making sweeping, crazy statements like this isn't even quantifiable on any level whatsoever. It's nuance, it's emotion, it's gray. Happiness isn't something that you can measure by going to your local doctor and having your blood drawn. Oh, look at that. We just took a vial of blood, and look at that. You are, in fact, one of the happiest people on earth. It shows right there in your blood. What? It Furthermore, there's no known happy meter in existence. And you're picturing the old movies with a machine with a cap on the head and all sorts of wires coming out of it, wires connected to your fingertips, and they flip the switch and boom, read a meter that says, yep, you are in fact among the happiest people on earth. You must be spending 10 hours or more a month handing out free books for Jehovah's Witnesses. It's obvious. I can see it right here on the meter. What? Ask yourself this. If there was a way to measure every human being on the planet, compile test results, and produce a report, when did this happen? I can assure you that this test to see who the happiest people on earth were is grossly incomplete in terms of data because I know myself, I was never asked to attend. I've never been measured to measure my happiness. And I was a Jehovah's Witness from the 1972 till I left 14 years ago. When did this report happen? I see the comment over several decades in the literature, over a century actually, but I must have missed the memo. Did anyone else miss that invite? There isn't a test in Earth starting in grade school where you can compile information or measure if not everyone is taking part in it, if it's not a subsection or a group. I can tell you I was baptized in 1985 and here I am, never got the invite. I wonder if my happiness was a part of this bold statement. Look, it's stupid. It's stupid and it's absurd. You can't measure someone's happiness per se. Even psychologists and mental health say that. They put together studies and they go into, some of the best universities in the United States, Stanford, Harvard, Ivy League schools, trying to measure mental health. It's a very complex subject, certainly in terms of how religion impacts it. But it doesn't stop there. So listen, from that same article that I quoted earlier, the Watchtower Study Edition, in as long ago as 2018, just 4 years ago, September, pages 15 through 20, under the aptly titled article, Happy Are Those Who Serve the Happy God, it has a box in the article, if you have a hard copy or a bound volume or the magazine itself. The box is entitled Some Expressions Explained. And it says this: Jehovah is the happy God. Nothing can take away from his happiness. He knows that he will make all of his purposes come true. So he is happy, regardless of what Satan has done or will do. He teaches us how to be happy too, even when we have problems. End quote. I'm going to give you one guess on how he teaches the rest of us to be happy. You want to take a shot? It involves New York, 8 guys, and always a great reminder to know that Jehovah is happy. He apparently is happy no matter what, according to this box in this article. At the same time, Satan is committing unspeakable violence and misery against every human being on the planet where the happiest people live. Oh, well, he's happy regardless. Who wants to get baptized? You can't measure happiness. You can take a shot at it. You can try to define it. I tried to do that at the outset. We don't always feel unmitigated happy all the time. I don't never known anyone like that. People that do 90% of the time, we all know them. They're a joy to be around, and you try to figure out, how can I bottle some of that? That's amazing. But to even claim that this has been measured or that you can say you're the happiest people on earth, meanwhile, nothing shakes Jehovah up. Never mind that Satan is just, causing 40,000 kids to die of famine and a lack of water daily. He's still happy. So I want to take a few minutes to take a look at some of the things, some of the factors that I believe, and this is just my belief, have a direct impact on the happiness of Jehovah's Witnesses. And undoubtedly, they have to contribute to them being the happiest people on earth. Yes, that's sarcasm. has to contribute, right? It's truly unbelievable. So let's take a look at some of these things. I want to consider the teaching that Jehovah's Witnesses are exposed to very early in their journey to become a Jehovah's Witness, whether they're a Bible study or they're a kid raised in it as I was, whatever the case may be, you're going to recognize this term if you're at all associated or have been with the happiest people on earth. And that is the term undeserved kindness. Now, I want to focus on that term for a few minutes. I admitted that seeing the innocent joy of children brings me immense happiness. I love it. If I'm bummed out and I see kids belly laughing, it yanks me out of that. Children are remarkable, and all of us got to be there at one point. Probably didn't enjoy it enough if we were in Jehovah's Witnesses. That's the facts. A lot of resentment on that one. But the innocent joy of children brings me happiness. I know I'm not alone on that. I hope to see lots of comments to that effect. Truthfully, I'm jealous of the little people. I'd rather be playing in the park or riding my bike with my buddies instead of doing this podcast. But the way a child lights up when they're excited, they're happy, or they're laughing, you know the feeling, right? You know it. We can relate to it. It's probably a little selfish. We see this kid and look at how happy they are. That's making me laugh. And it's probably triggering things in our brain without going down all kinds of psychology references to when we were a kid. Now imagine going over to that little person, leaning over, grabbing them by the arm, smiling really close to their face, and saying to them, I love it when you're happy and having fun. But just a reminder, you don't deserve it. Ladies and gentlemen, the governing body of Jehovah's Witness teaching on undeserved kindness. If you want to question a sense of deep happiness in a Jehovah's Witness, start there. Start here. That's my opinion. The Watchtower Society's translation of the Greek word charis, and I apologize, I'm not Greek. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. Bible translators have long translated charis, found in the Bible, as grace. Grace. But the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society translate charis as undeserved kindness. The words themselves paint a very distinct and strong emotional picture, and it's planted into the mind of a Jehovah's Witness on their journey to becoming one of the happiest people on earth. Like that kid. Look at them laughing. I think it's time I remind them that it's cool to see them laugh, but they don't deserve it. When charis is translated appropriately out of the Greek, arguably some would agree, lots of scholars on this, you will see a rich, full picture of what God meant by that word, or the writers meant, what Jesus meant. Grace, charis, denotes a gift. It's a gift. The gift is given without any expectation of works or ongoing payback. Grace is not a gift given with a disclaimer. You don't deserve this, but I love you, so I'm going to give it to you anyway. The very reminder that you're not deserving of this gift is a negative connotation. And what is it that usually follows from that? You got it. The human mind, it's almost universal in all of us, a sense of guilt, a sense of shame, if not engaged in all the things the Watchtower Society says you should be doing to show appreciation for this charis, their undeserved kindness. So from the word go, Jehovah's Witnesses are reminded that anything and everything they do will never change the fact that they never deserved it in the first place. Who feels warm and fuzzy inside right now? Aren't you happy? Imagine the look on the face of that little person I illustrated earlier. It makes me so happy to see you enjoying this day. Look at you laughing and playing with your friends. Just a quick reminder, You don't deserve to be. How this gets so easily dismissed, and the damage, the unbelievable damage to your mental health and your self-esteem that this does as a Jehovah's Witness, how this isn't measurable, as they like to say, is staggering. And man, it is proof that they know what they're doing. And this is but a sampling of weekly messaging a Jehovah's Witness is exposed to in a congregation on a weekly basis among the rest of the happiest people on earth. Don't dismiss this fact. If you're a Jehovah's Witness listening, again, respect, lots of respect. Been there, been right where you're sitting or standing. But don't dismiss the fact that you receive constant reminders, often subtle. It's almost like drip torture, that whatever they're giving to the organization isn't enough, and it's never going to be enough. Think about it. They're teaching that even after Armageddon and he wipes out kids again, drowns babies and puppies like he did in Noah's day, that there's going to be 1,000 years, then he's going to let Satan out again. Odd strategy. Satan's still around. He comes out of the abyss, according to them, to tempt people again. How many times are we going to have to prove this? Are we on a treadmill? I thought we were the happiest people on earth. But even then, during this 1,000-year reign, you're going to be having to teach people Bible stories and have Bible studies, according to the governing body, where you're reliving all this, where you're having to talk about all this. This messaging pounds into your head. It's by design. It's not unlike a sales organization and I don't mean to offend anyone that may take part in this. I do not agree with it. I'm very candid and respectful here. It's almost like an MLM or a pyramid scheme. Incidentally, subject for a show, Jehovah's Witnesses are very attracted to those schemes. Many good people I know caught up in them in the congregations. But let me ask you this. How many super happy and filled with joy salespeople do you know? When you go to the mall during Christmas or holiday shopping, doesn't everybody just look so happy? Is that the true source of happiness in a human being's life? Please don't minimize this point, no matter where you may be in this journey. If there was one area that made me question whether Jehovah's Witnesses could remotely be considered the happiest people on earth, it's this. I lived it from childhood through adulthood, through all my own mistakes, my own heartache, everything. The endless negative messaging that you get from the governing body and in a weekly round robin of meetings has a massive impact on your happiness, on your soul, on the way you think, on the way you feel, on your body. When you're told you don't really deserve this, you don't deserve to even be here, you don't deserve to be in this congregation, you don't deserve to have Jehovah love you, you don't deserve Jesus' guidance, you don't deserve the grade 8 in upstate New York, or that you must do more and more and more to continue to hold on to anything you're getting from God. When at any time in that dynamic do you experience true heart level, soul level happiness? As a Jehovah's Witness, and one was one most of my life, I can answer that question. Almost never. Almost never. Usually the joy you felt was if you were doing something they consider sinful. It sure as hell wasn't driving around in a car for an hour and a half on a Saturday in an uncomfortable tired dress, then hitting the Starbucks, gossiping about each other, then back to one return visit so we could count 2 hours. It sure as hell wasn't the meeting where I got the weekly reminder that any happiness I felt or any love was, well, thank you. It's good that you feel that way, but just a reminder, you don't deserve it. I give to you the teaching of undeserved kindness. As is the case with me, I went on a long journey when I left, and happiness was my end goal. It's my end goal, happiness and peace. So I thought, I'm leaving the happiest people on earth. Have I lost my mind? Because you're told that constantly and consistently at meetings and conventions and on videos now, even in what they're doing to children with Caleb and Sophia, which is the most disgusting and despicable form of brainwashing those sons of bitches are doing. Pisses me off. But as I did, I took a dive into the psychology of this. And as one reference in a psychology journal notes, it says this is a particular concern when we consider a phenomenon called the illusion of truth effect. This is something governing body has mastered. Back to the quote, it basically proves that any statement we read, see, or speak regularly is seen as more valid than one we're exposed to only occasionally. Interesting. How many meetings a week? Amazingly, it makes no difference whether the information is true or false. The only thing that matters is how we're exposed to it. Research from the University of California at Santa Barbara clearly shows that a weak message repeated twice becomes more valid than a strong message heard only once. Even one repetition has the power to change our minds. The same goes for pictures. Illustrations? Pictures? Child videos? Back to quote, which are just thoughts and ideas concentrated into an image. Repetition, for emphasis, the old timers will know that one, increases our mental validation of anything we're exposed to, which is why it works so well in political propaganda. End of quote. If we're not fully conscious of what we're exposing ourselves to, same quote. If we're not fully conscious of what we're exposing ourselves to, consistency will trump truth every time. Now consider how many times you've falsely called yourself stupid, untalented, ugly, or anything else, and you begin to understand how your internal propaganda shapes a false self-image. End quote. Don't dismiss this. The happiest people on earth, or so they are told, are conditioned. Do you think that the governing body know what they're doing when they continue to tell their people that they don't really deserve the kindness and love they're receiving from Jehovah? But again, they are then in the next moment reminded that they are happy, and it makes them the happiest people on earth to receive undeserved love and kindness. Do not dismiss that repetition trumps truth every time. Science has discovered this in the human mind. It's why propaganda works. It's why we love music in many ways. It's why children learn certain ways. They know what they're doing to the happiest people on earth. They're aware. Don't be delusional on this. The gut feeling you may feel listening to this, if you're on the fence, or the emotions you're experiencing at this moment, please, please, please don't dismiss them. I'm a nobody, can't see my face, just a guy. But the emotions you're feeling are for a reason. Because you do seek happiness. Whether you're a Jehovah's Witness or you're an Aborigine, the human race wants to be happy. That's why we're a little farther than animals, but even animals seek a measure of happiness. Don't dismiss this, please. But let's consider another factor that makes Jehovah's Witnesses apparently the happiest people on earth. It kind of bleeds into everything, right? And I don't want to go too deep on this, but the endless reminders that your happiness among this group hinges on strict obedience to 8 guys in New York you're never going to know. I'm not going to go too deep here. I'm not going to give a bunch of quotes from their publications at this time. We cover it a lot on this show. But it's literally stated to the audience, every meeting, every convention, every video, that everyone's future is dependent on strict obedience to Stephen Lett, Tony Morris, and the rest of that illustrious God squad in upstate New York. But the confusion that it causes mentally and emotionally, it just can't be underestimated. A typical Jehovah's Witness happiness is impacted by the mundane. Whether they're happy or not, or whatever this happiness level is, because they apparently have a God meter or something that they can make this claim. A typical JW life is mundane. Things like driving around in circles, knocking on empty houses for the 20th year in a row, or feeling guilty for wanting to bring their wife or their mate sexual pleasure in a certain private way, or the giving up of an interesting and well-paying career to put on a tie and share fairy tales with strangers. And when they don't agree, the message back is good luck dodging fireballs and earthquakes from the God of love. Oh, and the 8 of us. Us 8. We 8. A Jehovah's Witness brain often goes into hyperdrive, at least the thinkers, trying to justify how guys talking about human bodies looking like burnt hot dogs like Tony Morris did with a smile on his face, or that babies are enemies of Jehovah like Stephen Lett did in front of the entire collection of happiest people on earth, many of whom were listening were holding babies. Or how about covering child abuse or any other number of crimes against mankind, like people dying at the Holocaust or forgetting to get or refusing blood. All of this leads to the happiness quota, the quotient, the formula that a Jehovah's Witness lives under. The human brain simply can't understand it, and here's why. Because it's a lie. It's a lie. This concept that you don't deserve to be happy, but I'm going to tell you you're happy if you listen to me and do what I tell you, is baked into the cerebral cortex of every Jehovah's Witness, including those horrifically mean-spirited babies, as Stephen Lett told us, from a very young age. It's a lie. It's an absolute lie. But in one other area that drives me insane, when we consider the happiest people on earth and what impacts their happiness, or why they feel we'll ignore such facts as I'm about to share, or such pieces of the formula to true happiness, one of the things that drives me nuts is this one. There is always the reality that everyone, every human being they know outside the congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses is not only unhappy because they're not one of them, but they're also going to be destroyed in a mass genocide any given second now. This one is particularly great for little minds, little people, as they develop happiness as a Jehovah's Witness. To the kids who wonder if that little buddy or that little friend in class is somehow going to survive Jehovah's biggest and apparently happiest day ever when he wipes them all out. It's an excellent happiness builder in the mind of a Jehovah's Witness or a kid working their way towards baptism. And if you don't believe that we're supposed to believe that mass genocide and the endless messages surrounding that, the outcome of those who don't join the happiest people on earth, if you don't believe that that's a message, guess what? I know this shocks you. I've got another nugget of Holy Spirit from upstate New York for you. The Watchtower Study Edition, December 1st, 2005, under the incredibly titled article, Armageddon, a Happy Beginning, there is a subsection called Can a God of Love Fight? Where it gives us this strong encouragement that no doubt adds to the happiness of the happiest people on earth. It says, quote, many wonder, however, why a God who is the very embodiment of love would inflict death and destruction on much of humankind. The situation might be compared to that of a pest-infested house Would you not agree that a conscientious homeowner should safeguard the health and well being of his family by exterminating the pests? Instead of being a frightening, cataclysmic end, Armageddon will signal a happy beginning for righteous individuals who will live forever on a paradise earth. End quote. That's right. Armageddon is a happy beginning, folks. Little Johnny and Susie sitting in the audience in a kingdom hall, wondering about their classmate. Your classmate here is apparently a cockroach, deserving of extermination because his parents aren't Jehovah's Witnesses and he's just learning how to read in that class with you. But hey, little Johnny and Susie, soon to be baptized Jehovah's Witnesses, this is a happy day. This is a happy day. What the living hell? Pests. Jehovah, the God of love, in the article Armageddon, which signals a mass genocide that Toni Morris loves to show us by blowing out matches, likens it to hot dogs being split open, people's intestines and guts, birds eating them. That's a happy day. And you're lucky to be among the happiest people on earth who know it. Oh my God. Oh my God. I mean, I could share a zillion other factors that make Jehovah's Witnesses apparently the happiest people on earth, and likely will in other episodes. I think it's important to talk about what I personally saw as a lifelong JW and elder. So I'm going to get there. But is it any wonder that when you are considering the happiness or what makes a Jehovah's Witness happy, is it any wonder when you look at teachings like it's not deserved anyway, or you better obey the 8 of us or die, or Jehovah himself thinks a mass genocide, which will feature billions of rotting corpses, including babies, puppies, and everything else, that is supposed to be seen as a happy event, the beginning of happiness here on the earth? It's staggering. As we've talked about on this podcast before, even Noah apparently got off the ark. None of this happened. Sorry, folks. But in the fable of Noah and the ark, he apparently got off the ark. And even whoever wrote the story said it wasn't a short time after Noah was getting hammered and laying around in the nude. Wouldn't you? Wouldn't you? You've just witnessed a global genocide, all the way down to the plant level on this planet. Oh joy, there's a rainbow. Let's be happy. Never mind that the rainbow promised he'd never do it again. He's going to do it again. He had a change of heart. This is the messaging a Jehovah's Witness, including children, are getting in a kingdom hall every week. But let's get back to it for a minute. I mentioned a moment ago, it's important to talk about what I personally saw as a lifelong Jehovah's Witness and an elder. Simply put, I'm going to state this. I never saw a group of wildly happy Jehovah's Witnesses at any point in my life, much less, what I rank them as the happiest people on earth. I, in fact, saw and experienced the exact opposite. And I mean full-blown tragedy. And look, the human race, not every waking moment is happy or unhappy. But I can tell you that most of your time as a Jehovah's Witness is definitely not happy. And it's much worse than just being unhappy. I've just touched on a bunch of factors that I personally feel adds to this dynamic, that contributes to what I would say makes them among the most unhappy people on this earth. But I'm going to back it up with actual medicine and science. The National Library of Medicine study from Cambridge University and also in Australia had this to say, quote, the present study of 50 Jehovah's Witnesses admitted to the mental health services facilities of Western Australia suggests that members of this section of the community are more likely to be admitted to a psychiatric hospital than the general population. Furthermore, followers of the sect are 3 times more likely to be diagnosed as suffering from schizophrenia and nearly 4 times more likely from paranoid schizophrenia than the rest of the population at risk. These findings suggest that being a member of the Jehovah's Witnesses faith may be a risk factor predisposing to a schizophrenic illness. End quote. I can't even begin to imagine what it is that could affect so dramatically the mental health of a Jehovah's Witness. Yeah, that's sarcasm. I just read a bunch of reasons. It's unbelievable. They're more predisposed to mental illness than the general population. Wait a minute. The God Squad in upstate New York, those 8 guys that Jesus is talking to directly, allegedly, say we're the happiest people on earth. But I'm not happy. How come? I can't imagine. Wait a minute. Hold on. I'm actually experiencing some peace and happiness at this moment. Okay, good. I'm glad you're happy. Quick note, you don't deserve it, but congratulations on being happy. And by no way hang around with it. It's going to pass. It's hard to even be funny with this because truthfully, it's not funny. It's not funny. But it gets worse. The Havor Montag study, which I'm sure many ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, may be familiar with, which was released in 1977, a few decades ago. I was 10. So imagine, as you listen to this study and some of the results regarding Jehovah's Witness happiness, imagine what it's like 45 years later, today in 2022. But it notes that licensed therapist Havor Montag monitored the admissions to state and private mental hospitals and local mental health clinics in Ohio from 1972 to 1976. From this study of 102 cases, he estimated the mental illness rate of Jehovah's Witnesses is approximately 10 to 16 times higher than the rate for the general non-witness population. About 10% of the publishers, which is what they call full members, in the average congregation are in serious need of professional help, although they are often able to hide this fact quite well, especially from outsiders. From his intensive interviews with witness patients and others, Montag concluded that persons who had emotional problems were attracted to the witnesses, but involvement also caused many of the emotional problems that they suffered. This is evident from the fact that many with problems reported they were far happier when they left. The exact rate of mental illness among Jehovah's Witnesses is difficult to determine, but it is clear that it is significantly higher than the rate for the population as a whole. End quote. 45 years ago, 2 years after the 1975 debacle, we're now 108 years, according to the governing body, into the last days of the last days of the last days. You think the mental health's gotten better among the happiest people on earth? It's a steady diet. I'm losing my marbles here. Of destruction on your mental health. But I have to tell you, when I left, I sought out studies. I sought out therapy, as I often and openly state here. And I never really needed to read, endless medical studies to have proof of the deep unhappiness and mental disease and challenges among Jehovah's Witnesses. I lived it. I lived it personally in my own life, and I lived it as an elder. Depression is rampant among Jehovah's Witnesses, and I mean rampant. It's an epidemic. I was often shocked as I got older and more mature and got my head out of being a young guy and became an elder at 27. I was often shocked at how many of Jehovah's Witnesses were taking antidepressants within the congregation I served as an elder. And when I was young, that was discouraged. Therapy in antidepressants was discouraged. It's in print from the grade 8 in upstate New York. And I can't sit here and cite figures or statistics for the audience, but I can tell you from personal experience that the vast majority of those who suffered from depression and emotional fatigue and low self-esteem were women, the sisters, as they call women in Jehovah's Witnesses. And I received the same feedback from many other elders over many years. But perhaps the most shocking revelation of this subject of even depression or mental illness was that many of them were elders' wives or daughters. No irony there. They apparently, as shepherds, couldn't even protect the sheep they had in their own family under their own roof. But they'd get on stage and they'd tell you they were the happiest people on earth. To get really painfully serious for a minute, on more than one occasion, I was called out in the middle of the night to comfort someone having suicidal thoughts. And it pains me to relate that I've had fellow elders, that's right, elders, and friends, close friends, take their lives as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. But remember, they're the happiest people on earth. Jesus and the great 8 tell us so. It is painful. And at the time of this recording, I came in and hit the switch on this because I was told just last night, late last night and this morning, that 2 people I knew very, very dearly passed away in the last 48 hours. All my age. Both of them as a result of very serious health issues complicated by alcohol. Alcohol among the happiest people on earth. Got a lot of questions. A lot of questions for the guys in upstate New York that will never know either of these people that just died. I hadn't talked to them in years, obviously, due to being shunned. Still had an impact. And what's really interesting on this subject, for those that end up leaving Jehovah's Witnesses, we all know the famous quote of a few years ago where the governing body called us mentally diseased. Remember that? It actually became a hate crime, and there were lawsuits. The governing body calls those of us that leave and speak out about our experience as mentally diseased. And you know what? We were. We were mentally diseased. We were mentally diseased by the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses, proving once and for all that the intent, the weekly program, everything they pound those 8 million people with is evil. Because we are indeed mentally diseased. We had to leave to get back to being or finding any measure of happiness. We had to leave the happiest people on earth in order to find it. From that same study I quoted earlier, note this. Quote, in my clinical work with Jehovah's Witnesses, I've noticed that there is a distinct tendency for the better educated, more intelligent, more conscientious witnesses to have emotional problems. This is the opposite of that many studies indicate is true among non-Jehovah's Witnesses. This is partially because the more intelligent witnesses are more aware of the contradictions and problems in JW teachings. This awareness causes them to question and doubt, and this doubt is influential in developing their mental illness. End quote. Mental health studies, pickup quote, of the last 50 years ago go into great depth as to why Jehovah's Witnesses are far from the happiest people on earth. The governing body actually creates mental illness, folks. It certainly doesn't create happiness. It isn't tough to figure this out. Aside from controlling everything in your life, from your thoughts to your appearance to your desires to your own body, you have the daily and weekly reminder that someday you will be happy, just not today. The spiritual paradise, the very name of this podcast, surviving the spiritual paradise, is all a Jehovah's Witness can hope for. The governing body creates a lack of happiness. It creates mental illness, as science and medical professionals and mental health professionals recognize in all kinds of studies that are very easy to find and read. And it often impacts those of us that are conscientious. They went a little over the top and might be uncomfortable to say the better educated or more intelligent. I don't want to, that almost sounds a little condescending, so I'm uncomfortable with that. But conscientious certainly fits. Many die-hard, hard-working, blue-collar type Jehovah's Witnesses who are in it to win it and be the most loving people on earth end up very emotionally and mentally sick because they can't corroborate what Jesus is telling them through the big guys in upstate New York. And it certainly does not place them among the happiest people on this planet. It's all so damn depressing. Imagine telling a child they can have ice cream after they eat all their spinach and broccoli, only to have that kid choke it down, which I would do. And then when they've swallowed it, they're faced on massive gag reflex mode. Then you tell them, well, I changed my mind. Maybe you can get ice cream tomorrow night. And you do this to them over and over and over and over again, night after night after night, with the kid choking down the vegetables, only to have mom and dad show them the carton of ice cream a few feet away, but then telling the kid, nah, we decided not to give you the ice cream after all. Dessert's been moved to another night yet again. It's a cult. Jehovah's Witnesses are a cult. They are not even remotely close to being the happiest people on this earth. All in all, I personally doubt there's an XJW or a current PMO that will look any of us in the eye and tell you they left or want to leave what is the happiest people on earth. It's a bit of a paradox, don't you think? It's a bit of a paradox. I'm just so happy I want to leave. No. Those in the know, those who have healed, those who worked through excruciating pain, those who have lost family and friends, those who have maybe lost businesses, and certainly those of us that have lost time, know that it's one hell of a journey to leave the happiest people on earth. But I'll be damned if it ain't worth it. There are many absurd claims by the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses, but this one, that they're the happiest people on earth, truly ranks as one of the top for me personally. It's probably right behind the one where Jesus was in heaven. He kicked his own child, by extension, Satan, out, and then he took the time to, by the way, he kicked the child down to earth, which is odd in its own right. But then he looked down on earth where he kicked him and said, wow, that Judge Rutherford and his friends are the highest quality characters I can find on the planet. I'll use those guys to talk to all of mankind because, well, I personally did a subpar job during my visit, and I recently lost my voice and can't do it myself. What? That's the worst one. But this issue that these people that come into this organization are that suddenly the happiest, I'd probably put it number 2. But my final message this week, and this one's big. I think I've commented on here before. Jehovah's Witnesses are very big at moving the ice cream bowl. They go to that kid and say, choke down the vegetables. Ice cream's a few feet in front of you. Don't touch it till you're done with the veggies. Then they move the bowl again. Then they move the ice cream again the next night. On and on it goes for decades and centuries. Jehovah's Witnesses are big on delaying happiness. It might be among the most criminal things the governing body's doing because it takes time. The famous quote by Roy Bennett, I've always loved it. He said this, maybe he's inspired. He said, quote, do not set aside your happiness. Do not wait to be happy in the future. The best time to be happy is always now. End quote. So, they don't got a meter. You can't take a blood test. All of it's undeserved anyway. You got to be obedient to us. And the guy who's making you the happiest person on earth is going to destroy and kill everyone who's not with us. I present to you the cornerstones of the happiest people on earth. Jehovah's Witnesses are far from the happiest people on earth. Thanks for listening this week. Can't wait to see the comments, thoughts, experiences of all those who take the time. I'm incredibly grateful to listen to this little show. I should have said at the outset, one of the things that brings me immense happiness is to get that note, that DM, that YouTube, and I so apologize I can't get to them all, that tells me this show is helping them. It made them think of something. It was a virtual hug in a world where they needed one. Whatever it is, God, that means the world to me. Thank you. Please give this some thought. To everyone out there, be happy. Whatever it is today, go do something that makes you happy. Go do something that makes you happy. I will see you next week. Until that time, be well.